Min Seolha has always been hardworking and decent, but how did she end up at Hotel A1 getting intimate with her boss? Well, Seolha works at Venus as the secretary of Jungmo, the owner of the company. It's a sunny afternoon when Seolha walks into President Jungmo's office and offers to lower his blinds since he looks uncomfortable. He tells her that there is no need for her to lower the blinds since what is bothering him is the resignation letter she submitted. Seolha wanted to know why the letter was bothering Jungmo when she went as far as checking the internet to ensure that her strokes were correct. It pains President Jungmo that the resignation letter is written so perfectly, and he declares that everything she does turns out perfect. Addressing the matter at hand, he starts by trying to know why Seolha is dropping a resignation letter on him all of a sudden. Seolha replies that she has her personal reasons for wanting to resign, as Jungmo has his personal reasons for trying to keep her. Sure, a big company like his has other secretaries, but Seolha outperforms them all. It's been 3 years since Jungmo started working hand in hand with her, and she has always been a step ahead of him at all times. For instance, when they are to meet dignitaries, she always had a gift pre-planned. Aside from that, Seolha also carried out her duties exceptionally well, exceeding expectations and showing amazing results at all times. Last summer, when Seolha went on vacation, Jungmo understood how valuable she was. While she was away, he experienced top-tier work paralysis. Now, Seolha wants to quit. To make her stay, Jungmo reminds her that they have been working together for 3 years, and he cannot do without her. Since she doesn't say anything, Jungmo asks if something serious happened, so she wants to resign. She assures him that's not her reason for wanting to resign. Now he knows she doesn't want to resign because of something unavoidable, so he guesses she wants a salary raise. Seolha then reminds him that she has the best salary in the industry, dropping a boulder on him. To try and save the situation, Jungmo offers Seolha a promotion, but she feels people will see this as favoritism, thus dropping another boulder on Jungmo. Finally, he offers her a car to help her get to work more easily, but she drops the last boulder on him by reminding him that although she has a license, she isn't a fan of driving. All his suggestions have failed. And when Jungmo takes a second to observe Seolha's face, he can see that she has no intention of changing her plans. He decides to stop guessing what Seolha wants and decides to ask her what he will do that will satisfy her. Jungmo offers Seolha anything she wants, promising to grant her the request no matter what. With the way Seolha reacts after hearing this, we can tell she has a request, but it is most likely going to be a big ask. Jungmo encourages Seolha to speak her mind, and she does, requesting that he get intimate with her. The vibe in the room immediately feels off, and since Seolha can't tell how Jungmo will respond, she feels she messed up. Jungmo, on the other hand, believes he didn't hear her properly and is about to confirm what he heard when Seolha apologizes for making the request. She begs President Jungmo to pretend he didn't hear her request. She is embarrassed and turns away from him as she declares that she is out of her mind and says something strange. To her astonishment, Jungmo doesn't scold her. Instead, he tells her he will think about the request. He promises to give her his response by the weekend and asks her to wait for him until then. Later that day, at the workers' lunch break, Seolha tells a colleague that she accidentally asked Jungmo to spend the night with her. Her colleague finds it hard to believe that Seolha had the guts to make such a request to the Jungmo she knows. That's because Jungmo is young and successful, and everything he touches turns into gold in their world. Seolha's friend adds that Jungmo constantly makes the news and is popular among women. This hottie, the one and only CEO of Venus department store where they work, could not have been the person Seolha asked to spend the night with. When Seolha affirms that this is the man, her friend is baffled. She scolds Seolha for making such an absurd request without confessing her feelings to him first, and asks her what has suddenly gotten into her. Seolha heaves a deep sigh of frustration before filling us in on what made her make such a request. She starts by telling us that her unrequited love for Jungmo started 3 years ago when she just started working for him. It was a cold winter morning, and she was briefing Jungmo on his schedule for the day. During the briefing, Seolha paused, probably due to the cold. When Jungmo noticed this, he permitted Seolha to return home early if it was too cold. As expected, she refused, promised to make his schedule work smoothly, and apologized for making him worry. When she was done helping out, she returned to the office, where the receptionist informed her of the hot pack Jungmu had sent for her. The receptionist had placed the hot pack on Seolha's desk and informed her that Jungmu had received one for each worker. She just saw it as him being nice and looking out for his employees, but Seolha saw it as much more. Maybe it was because hers came with a note from Jungmu acknowledging how hard she worked that her unrequited love for Jungmu started. Sadly, shortly after discovering she had feelings for her boss, there was a rumor about him getting engaged. From hearsay information, she got to know that Jungmu was probably getting engaged to the youngest daughter of the head of the Tikang group. Jungmu had a meeting with that group on the day Seolha's love for him began, so maybe the engagement was what they wanted to discuss. Sure, the gossip didn't know this. They just believed it was a thing of the rich sticking to the rich and living in a world different from the ones the common folk lived in. It was rumors, no doubt. But hearing all that reminded Seolha that Jungmu was always going to be out of her league. She already knew that from the start and decided not to see her not being with him as only natural. Because of the rumors that day, Seolha tried to envision the woman Jungmu would marry. She was so lost in thought that she overfilled her coffee cup. Seolha, who felt she knew how to separate work from personal matters, made the mistake of ever falling in love with her boss to the point that she got distracted, and Jungmu could see that. For 3 years, she lived with the feeling of love for her boss and tried to cope with it. That was why she submitted the resignation letter, which she now regrets. She sees herself as trash now, but her friend urges her not to be so negative. Seolha's friend suspects that their boss might have feelings for Seolha because of how he talks to her. On the contrary, Seolha believes he treats her that way because they have a good secretary and CEO relationship. Nevertheless, she doesn't know how she will face Jungmu now. Seolha's friend helps her calm down by assuring her that Jungmu has feelings for her. She then puts down her drink and, in a more serious tone, urges Seolha to listen to her for now, no matter what she says. She then asks Seolha if she is seriously interested in meeting her boss. As they discuss, unaware that Jungmu is closing up on them, Seolha's friend asks her if she doesn't always want to date a tall and handsome man. Those are 2 qualities, along with his unique personality, that make him even better. According to Seolha's friend, she has never seen a man like Jungmu before, but she is certain he is interested in Seolha, which is why she urges her to go meet him at least once. Seolha is in the process of asking for her friend to explain what she is trying to say when Jungmu appears behind her and calls her. When she answers, he asks her why she did not respond to his message. It's then she checks her phone. She spots 2 messages, one from her boss and the other from her friend from earlier, whose name is Eunsim. She is more interested in the message from her friend Eunsim about her boss looking jealous, and she scoffs at the message. She believes it's just work he wants to discuss, and it looks like it is when he starts talking about a meeting they need to attend. Concerning the meeting, she informs him that she made an appointment for 5 o'clock, and her phone starts ringing. Jungmu wants to know if the call is urgent, permitting her to take it if it is so urgent. Seolha replies that the call isn't so urgent, causing Jungmu to get curious and ask who the caller is. Normally, Jungmu never asks Seolha about personal stuff, so she wonders why he is asking this now. She reminds herself not to get carried away because Jungmu might just be asking. In the end, she does not respond, remaining silent until the elevator doors slide open. When they open, Seolha attempts to get off, but Jungmu stops her. The mood in the elevator starts getting warm because of this sudden move, and Jungmu makes it even warmer by offering to answer Seolha's question now. He agrees that they should get intimate, but with the condition that there is no limit to the number of times they'll get intimate. His counteroffer surprises Seolha, and her reaction makes Jungmu feel she doesn't like it. However, he then reminds her that she was the one who was acting boldly a few hours ago. Finally, she mumbles out that she agrees with the term. It's a response, but it's not enough for Jungmu, so he makes her say it loudly, helping her gain the courage to audibly agree that they spend time together. Her agreement is what leads to the heated moment that takes place in Hotel A one later on. When they are done, Jungmu escorts Seolha downstairs, gets a cab for her, and readies himself to say goodnight. Before he does, however, Seolha talks about the important meeting he has later in the night and asks him if he is sure she can skip it. Jungmu assures Seolha it's okay and apologizes for not being able to take her home himself. Again, he states that he will be fine on his own and instructs Seolha to head home and rest. He then decides to get cheesy and tells Seolha that she already has a tough day because of him, hinting at their little moment of intimacy. Seolha gets the joke nonetheless and blushes because of it. However, Jungmu doesn't stop there. He adds that Seolha complained she was too tired to move, making her want to leave as quickly as possible. Seolha requests that Jungmu call her if there is anything she needs to do, and then her cab leaves. Jungmu watches the cab leave and notes its plate number just in case. In the end, Seolha gets home safely and runs herself a bath. Now that she is all alone, she questions her sanity and wonders how she will face Jungmu tomorrow at work. Still, Seolha can't get Jungmu off her mind. She tries to slap the thoughts of Jungmu out of her head so she can get back to reality, but jolts when she gets a text message. Seolha suspects the text is from Jungmu, but when she checks, it's not, and she scolds herself for thinking it was Jungmu when he is in a meeting right now. Seolha, who is now in bed looking sad, remembers that she and Jungmu aren't even dating. Because of this, she tells herself that the best thing to do is not expect anything and not get ahead of herself. Eventually, she falls asleep, only for her phone to start ringing late into the night. Seolha sleepily picks up her phone to see who it is, only to see it's a call from Jungmu that wakes her up instantly. Concerned, Jungmu asks Seolha if he woke her up, but she claims he didn't. Immediately, her brain goes to work-related stuff, and Seolha questions why he is calling at this hour, wondering if something went wrong with the meeting. Jungmu assures Seolha that she doesn't have to worry since the meeting went well. He tells her that he wanted to call earlier but couldn't because President Kim has a drinking problem. She then wonders why he doesn't sound drunk. He tells her how he rushed to call her, knowing it was late, but he kept worrying about leaving her alone. His words melt Seolha's heart, causing it to beat loudly. He apologizes for talking too much. He assumes she must be tired and asks her to rest well, promising to see her tomorrow. His words are so kind that they manage to get to Seolha to the point that she doubts she will be able to go back to sleep. Jungmu, on the other hand, just stares at his phone after the call, recalling how it has been 3 years since he has been working with Seolha. He knew there were always rumors about his relationship with Seolha, but as people saw how well she did her job, the rumors faded. During their 3 years of working together, Jungmu spent almost every day with Seolha. Sure, he noticed her at that time, but he never wanted to get involved with her because of the many rumors that would have emerged. All along, he drew a clear line, but tonight, they crossed it. So what next? Well, that's a question to be answered another day. Jungmu finally gets home and gets ready for bed, only for him to be thinking about Seolha and how she is driving him crazy. The following day, Seolha is at work as usual, giving Jungmu a rundown on what he has to do today. She also came in with a sandwich for him, but as she lists out his schedule, all he can think about is how efficient she is. When she is done, he gives her a thumbs up and suggests they go down for the meeting. In the elevator on their way down, after a few minutes of loud silence, Jungmu asks Seolha if she slept well last night. It's a plain harmless question, but it reminds Seolha of the intimacy she and Jungmu shared last night. Hurriedly, she waves the thoughts away and awkwardly replies that she had so much rest she feels refreshed. Although Jungmu notices the way Seolha is reacting, he says nothing about it and tells her that he is glad she slept well. As if the vibe in the elevator were not weird enough, Jungmu asks Seolha if she heard about his engagement. She had forgotten about this and started panicking, wondering why she had become intimate with an engaged man. She then pretends to be too busy with her tablet to hear what Jungmu is saying, but he keeps going anyway. He declares that he doesn't know who started the rumor and asks if it is because of the rumor that Seolha made that proposal. Seolha is surprised to hear that the engagement talks were just a rumor. It's a really awkward conversation, and she doesn't know how to get out of it when the heavens smile upon her and her phone starts vibrating. Seolha asks Jungmu for permission to check her phone, and she is permitted to do so. It's a notification about the Gani Angel Christmas release, but Jungmu doesn't know this and asks if it's work-related. Seolha tells Jungmu the message she got is personal, so he doesn't ask any more questions. The day goes on, but when Seolha is about to close for the day, she discusses with Jeongmu her intention to take a leave tomorrow. She moodily apologizes for having to take this leave at such a time, but Jungmo assures her it's fine. He can see she doesn't look happy and asks if something is wrong, but she asserts that she is fine and will make sure her issue does not affect work. Jungmu says nothing more, allowing Seolha to leave for the day, even though he knows she isn't fine. We are yet to know what really spoilt Seolha's mood, as she is on a bus heading somewhere, deep in thought. She is thinking about how every year when winter approaches, she visits her father. At the prison, she gets informed by a guard that her father has refused to come out and see her today as well. Hearing this makes Seolha even sadder. Her father is currently serving time for murder, specifically a hit and run. Her father was always a kind man, so she couldn't believe that he would do such a thing until the judge spelled it out clearly on the day he sentenced her dad. The issue was not that he hit the victim, but that he ignored the victim even though he knew the victim was alive. He was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, which is a slap on the wrist for the crime he committed. However, the problem is that every time Seolha goes to visit him, he refuses to see her. The guard tells Seolha that although her father refuses to see her, on the day she visits, he seems to feel better. He observes that it looks like Seolha's father is quietly waiting for her. Seolha thanks the guard for the information and tells him she will come again some other time. Winter weighs on Seolha's heart, but she still tries to go about her day as best she can. From the prison, she heads to the store, where she purchases a surprise pack and is lucky to win a stuffed snowman. The store owner congratulates her and applauds her for being so lucky, as so many people want the snowman. Nevertheless, Seolha was hoping to get something else when she opened the pack. Since that's the case, the store owner suggests Seolha try trading the snowman with someone else, as it is the most popular one. Seolha admits that is a nice suggestion, but the only issue is that she wants to get it herself. Her confession catches the store owner's interest, so she asks Seolha what she wants. Seolha wants Rudolph, and I feel her reason is tied to the crime her father committed. From the store, Seolha heads home, thinking about how it's starting to feel like winter. Suddenly, her phone rings, and it's her friend Yoonsim. Yoonsim wants to know how Seolha's visit to her dad went, which causes Seolha's mind to drift back to her childhood. So, Seolha's father committed the crime when Seolha was still very young. Since he was her guardian and she had no one else to stay with, she was sent to the Sobang orphanage. It was there she met Yoonsim, her precious friend who understands all her circumstances. Later, Yoonsim talks about how she has prepared a lot of food and wants to know if Seolha would like to come over. Seolha can see that Yoonsim is worried about her, but she apologizes and turns down Seolha's kind offer, stating that she doesn't feel like having dinner today. Yoonsim tells Seolha that there is no need to apologize, as her not wanting to eat alone is not enough reason for Seolha to feel sorry. Seolha then suggests they have a light beer instead of a meal, and Yoonsim agrees. She informs Seolha that she will be at her place shortly. Yoonsim's kindness reaches Seolha, who thanks her. Yoonsim suddenly becomes curious about what Seolha is doing. Seolha explains that she is just thanking Yoonsim because she is grateful for her, and finds it reassuring to have her around. Yoonsim, on hearing this, acts tough and queries Seolha for being mushy all of a sudden. She also instructs Seolha to wash up because she will be at her place soon. Seolha agrees to do as she has been asked, and Yoonsim is about hanging up when she remembers something important and stops. When Seolha asks Yoonsim if she has something important to say, Yoonsim lets her know that Jeongmu came by earlier in the day. Elsewhere, Jeongmu is looking all gloomy, constantly checking his phone to see if Seolha has responded to his text. He can't understand why, after suddenly taking a day off, Seolha is not answering her phone and is worried about her. Jungmo wonders if something happened to Seolha, and right on cue, she gives him a call. Without even waiting for the phone to ring long, Jungmo picks up. Seolha then asks him if something is wrong, and while trying to stay calm, he tells her that the office was in chaos since she was absent. He wishes to know if Seolha just pulled a stunt so he would realize that she is the most efficient secretary, adding that she didn't even answer her calls all day. Concerned, Seolha asks if there is anything urgent at work and offers to take care of it immediately. Jungmu replies that everything at work is fine, and he is just worried because she suddenly took a leave. In a reassuring tone, he tells her that if the matter is uncomfortable, she does not have to talk about it, before repeating that he is just worried about her. Seolha thanks Jungmu for worrying about her and is about to say more when she gets various rings on her door. She suspects that it's Eunsim, so she decides to conclude the call quickly. Jungmu claims to understand, stating that it sounds urgent, so she should go and open the door. He also asks her to get some rest, as he will see her next week, and ends the call. Now that he knows Seolha is okay, Jungmu leans back on his chair thinking. He wonders if calling her at such a late hour was he doing too much before sparing the doorbell some thought. Days pass, and the following week arrives, the day Seolha resumes work. Jungmu is checking his watch, waiting for her arrival, when he suddenly hears some staff talking about Seolha. He eavesdrops, mostly because they are trying to establish whether Seolha is dating someone. The staff talk about Seolha's unexpected leave on Friday, how she had been checking her phone a lot while she was at work, and how her complexion has looked better lately. It's all very random points, but they give Jungmu a lot to think about. He thinks about how he saw Seolha seriously discussing some tall, handsome guy the first day he and her slept together. He also noticed that Seolha did check her phone often and asked the gossiping staff if they had seen Seolha. They tell him that Seolha just stepped out to take a call, and then he starts worrying about the doorbell he heard yesterday when he was speaking with Seolha. With a lovesick mind, Jungmu goes to his office, only to see Seolha there. Immediately, she sees him. She tells him they just got a call from Taekang, which explains the call she went out to take. Seolha quickly briefs Jungmu on the details of the call, informing him that Taekang wants to meet with him as soon as possible and President Kim will be coming in person. He is interested in this information but wants to know if his schedule will allow it. Seolha tells him that she has already scheduled a meeting for tomorrow evening. He is okay with this and wants to know what else is on his schedule. Then, Seolha tells him that she cannot have lunch with him today. Jungmu immediately asks why, and Seolha tells him she has something to do during lunch. She isn't even done talking when Jungmu chips in, asking her why she has been avoiding him lately. He suspects that it's because she is tired of him, but far be it from that. Seolha doesn't even know what Jungmu is talking about. So he explains that he has noticed that since their night together, she has been using all her vacation days. Jungmu also points out that Seolha was not at her desk today when he checked and wants to know if the guy Eunsim introduced her to asked her not to eat with him. Seolha can see now that there is a misunderstanding, so she addresses it. First, she tells him she wasn't at her desk earlier because she was arranging tomorrow's meeting. Next, she addressed her request for leave last Friday, assuring Jungmu that she really had personal matters to attend to. Seolha also addresses Jungmu's belief that Eunsim introduced her to a guy and is about to tell him he was the guy they were talking about when he cut her off. She had forgotten to address the doorbell, so he brings it up, and Seolha tells him it was Eunsim at the door that day. Cold sweat runs down Jungmu's face after hearing all this, as he knows he must have sounded like a creep a few seconds back. He sighs in frustration, ashamed that he misunderstood, while Seolha feels uncomfortable, wondering if Jungmu thought she had been avoiding him since that day. Seolha is about saying more when there is a knock at the door, interrupting her. The person at the door informs Jungmu that she had been trying to reach him but couldn't, so she came to his office to inform him about an urgent meeting scheduled for the previous project. Jungmu sighs after hearing this. But is it because this woman has saved him from a weird conversation, or because he is annoyed that he and Seolha were disturbed? Whatever his reason, Jungmu just tells Seolha that they should go to the meeting. Sure, she agrees and goes with him, but deep down, Seolha knows there is a lot that was left unsaid. From the meeting until close to the end of the day, Seolha and Jungmu go about their businesses without speaking to each other. Finally, when Seolha is rounding up work for the day, she notes that they haven't spoken since that morning. Suddenly, Jungmu walks by, spotting Seolha working, and expresses shock that she has not clocked out yet. Seolha says that she has a lot more work to finish up, and he walks past her, instructing her not to push herself too hard. Now that he is in his office, Seolha sees this as her chance to talk to him and follows him into his office. Once she is in, he wastes no time and starts talking, asking Jungmu to forget about the proposal she made to him the other day. It was what started all these conflicting emotions, but Jungmu still didn't understand why she wanted to forget their agreement. Seolha starts by claiming that she was emotional that day, but before she can say more, Jungmu stops her, asking her if she wants to stop because he did not impress her that day. Seolha is confused now, but Jungmu continues, seeking to confirm whether she is trying to say that she is backing out from their agreement. He then confesses his love for Seolha and how he had been holding back his feelings for her for 3 years. Jungmu admits that his love for Seolha made him agree to the proposal in the first place. Wow, Seolha didn't know this. She too had been holding back feelings for 3 years. She seeks clarity, but to give her that, Jungmu continues with his confession. He tells her that he wanted to go to her yesterday but wondered if he had the right to do so. And that's all Seolha has to hear before she tells Jungmu that she loves him too. After Seolha's confession, Jungmu warmly places his hand on her cheek, but stops and tells her she is getting ahead of herself. Hearing this makes Seolha feel embarrassed, so she pulls away from Jungmu, declaring that she will just get back to work. He stops her, however, instructing her not to work overtime today, and just says she has plans. Seolha, who doesn't have any plans, asks Jungmu what plans he is talking about, and then he tells her they just made one. The scene shifts to the Doi Hotel, where Jungmu and Seolha lodge and spend the entire night getting intimate. By morning, the hotel room is littered with Jungmu and Seolha's clothes. She is still in bed with Jungmu, nonetheless, too tired to get up because of how busy they were last night. When she finally opens her eyes, she sees that Jungmu is still sleeping and observes his face. Thinking back, she never thought she'd see his face at the end of the week. Now that she is observing him even closer, Seolha concludes that Jungmu is more handsome up close. She is about poking his face for the fun of it when he wakes up just in time and wraps her hand in a hand hug. It looks like he has been awake the whole time, and he teases Seolha about the previous night, wanting to know if it wasn't enough for her. He attempts to talk her into round 2, but when she tries to explain herself, he just wraps her in his warm embrace and tells her that if he could see her every morning, it would be great. After that, Seolha and Jungmu kept hanging out every weekend. It got so much that one Monday, Seolha resumed work feeling sleepy because she couldn't sleep last night. She is all teary-eyed when Eunsim calls out to her. Apparently, Eunsim had been calling out to her for some time, but she didn't notice because she wasn't paying attention. She apologizes to Eunsim for not responding, claiming she is a bit confused. This makes Eunsim curious to know what has got Seolha so flustered. Because of her current state of mind, Seolha can't tell which part to start from. She clearly remembers that the last thing she told Eunsim was that Jungmu accepted the proposal. Eunsim guesses that what's got Seolha flustered is good news and has something to do with Jungmu. She is correct, as Seolha tells her that they officially agreed to be in a relationship. Eunsim is happy to hear this, and also happy she guessed right, so she asks Seolha to spill the details. As she does, a new character arrives at the Korea International Airport. He is annoyed that he has to visit Korea again, but whether this guy is a villain or not remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that he stands out in the crowd. Everyone has eyes on him except the unlucky child, who doesn't watch where he is going and ends up bumping into the guy's luggage. The kid trips and falls, but all this guy does is take off his shades and glare at the kid in disdain before walking away like nothing happened. The chances of this guy being a villain are high, especially because he has Jungmu in mind. Seolha and Jungmu close work early because they have an evening meeting with Taekang. The meeting starts at 6 o'clock, which is the time President Kim will be available to discuss it with them. Jungmu declares that since it's urgent, there is no other way for something he doesn't state, and he asks Seolha to book him a multi-purpose room. Owing to their relationship, it's no wonder Seolha misunderstands Jungmu's intentions. So he asks her if she is starting to have lewd thoughts. Jungmu teases her because of these thoughts. He explains that he needs the room to rest a little before the meeting, as he was so busy last night that he couldn't sleep. He needs to rest, however, because he knows President Kim is someone who makes others tired. Suddenly, Jungmu attempts to hold Seolha's hand, but she doesn't let him, wondering what the staff would think if they saw them holding hands. Jungmu teases her because of this, and tells her that if she observes closely, she will see that there is nothing there but the CCTV. That's not enough assurance for Seolha, who has to look around to confirm whether there really isn't anyone around before holding Jungmu's hand. She then tells him that she will just do this today and offers to drive if Jungmu feels tired. However, it's no surprise that he still doesn't let her drive. Later that day at the meeting with President Kim, Jungmu and President Kim discuss. Seolha is not okay with what they are discussing. During the meeting, she notices that President Kim is staring at her funny but doesn't know why. The meeting and the weird stare end up annoying Seolha, but what pisses her the most is that she cannot say anything. Looks like Jungmu spots President Kim staring at Seolha and calls out to him, only to discover that he has not been listening all along. His excuse is that he is old, so he has been absent-minded lately and ends up offending Jungmu with his excuse. Nevertheless, all Jungmu does is take out his anger on the documents he has in hand and repeat what he said earlier. They then return to discussing their shared intention to bid for land and discuss it long into the night. After the meeting, they still discuss the land. President Kim offers to handle the buying and selling of the land, and Jungmu tells him that it's okay as long as he finishes on time. Now that the meeting is over, President Kim gets shady, reaching out to Seolha and asking that they go somewhere else. He states that she has been working hard, but before he is done laying out his proposal, Jungmu steps in. He hands over his car keys to Seolha and tells her that he thinks he forgot his phone in the car. He claims to have someone urgent to contact, which is why he wants her to go get the phone, and she replies that she will bring it right away. Now that they are alone, President Kim jokes about how Jungmu really likes working with a girl who is young and beautiful. He tries to warn President Kim to steer clear by reminding him that Seolha is his secretary, but President Kim doesn't get the hint and keeps going anyway. He states that he has observed that Seolha tied her hair and it made her look even prettier, so during the meeting he couldn't concentrate. All this talk is pissing Jungmu off the more, but President Kim doesn't seem to notice. He does notice that Jungmu is sensitive today, unlike other days, and wants to know if this sensitivity has something to do with his secretary, Seolha. He starts talking about the relationship between Seolha and Jungmu, when Jungmu stops him, calling him real trash. President Kim acts like he doesn't understand what Jungmu is talking about when a loud banging sound echoes across the room. It was the sound of Jungmu punching the wall. He then claims that he was saying the wall has cracks that can even be seen from a distance, so it is trash. He continues, coldly stating that if he punches the wall even lightly, it will leave a crack, which is evidence of sloppy construction. His cold tone seems to scare President Kim, who tries to act cool and asks Jungmu what he is saying and how long he has been working with construction. Nevertheless, Jungmu continues, stating that the building has been completed for a week now, so there's nothing strange about him pointing out these things. Jungmu punches the wall 2 more times, adding that it sounds empty, but then President Kim stops him, claiming he knows all this. He also believes there is a misunderstanding and intends to ease the tension. Jungmu claims there is no misunderstanding. He just wants to check the truth. He asks President Kim if Royal Philips knows about the sloppy construction, which is not Tikang's standard. The scene shifts to the ground floor, with Seolha returning after failing to see the phone Jungmu sent her to find. She doesn't know what to do, as she has looked everywhere for it, but has failed to find it. Suddenly, her phone vibrates. When she checks it, she sees that it's a message from Jungmu apologizing for staring at her inappropriately at the meeting. She doesn't understand the text when Jungmu walks over to her and suggests that they go since he has found his phone. Although that's settled, she wants to know if they are going to the other place President Kim talked about, and Jungmu tells her that the arrangement has been cancelled. On the top floor, President Kim sits in his office, boiling in rage. His apology to Seolha was influenced by Jungmu. Jungmu had told him to use the contact he got from Seolha's business cards and send her an apology, before deleting her contact. He is still thinking about this when someone knocks on his office door and walks in with his head bowed. President Kim, who can no longer contain his emotions, tosses the document on the table and asks him where he is. Director Han, suffering from the backlash of President Kim's talk with Jungmu, tells President Kim that he is away because a certain young master Taegun requested that he pick him up from the airport. This young master Taegun is the blonde villain who just arrived in Korea. Taegun notices that President Kim looks angry and picks up one of the documents on the floor, asking if he can help the president. President Kim is still angry but tries to hold back his rage and asks Taegan if he knows how hard it was for him to block a certain article so his father doesn't see it. Taegan ignores this, addressing President Kim as uncle when he tells him that if he inherits Taekang, he will give him a good position in the company. Taegan smiles mischievously while viewing the Venus land bid and Taekang construction, declaring that it seems like he and his uncle's goals are still the same. Looks like he has bad intentions for Jungmu, who is leaving Taekang's premises, unaware of Taegan's arrival. It is unclear where Seolha and Jungmu are headed, but the mood in the car as they go is very clear. Seolha is unhappy because Jungmu has refused to tell her what happened in the meeting room, so he tells her that all he did was tell President Kim to handle the job quickly. She then asks him if he is the reason President Kim sent her an apology text, but he denies it, suggesting that President Kim might just have apologized because he felt uneasy. He adds that President Kim might have seen how important it was that he apologized to Seolha. She decides to let this slide but is about to give him a heads up on what to do next time something like this happens. Then, she notices the bruises on Jungmu's knuckles. Seeing that makes Seolha feel like Jungmu hit President Kim, but all he does is stare at his knuckles, looking unhappy that he was unable to hide them. When they arrive at Jungmu's home, Seolha carefully takes care of his knuckles. While dressing the bruises, she tells Jungmu that the best thing to do is ignore President Kim, because he knows how he is. Concerned, she asks Jungmu if he had a real fight with President Kim, but he stands by his earlier excuse that he swiped his hand against a wall in the hallway. Seolha finally believes Jungmu, accepting his excuse because, according to her, he isn't the type of person to cause fights. Her words pierce Jungmu's heart, but he says nothing. She heaves a sigh of relief, glad that Jungmu isn't in the police station or hospital right now. Although Seolha is already tending to the bruises as gently as possible, Jungmu asks her to be even more gentle. She replies, telling him that he needs to say it hurts, so he teases her about liking things like being hurt. Although she is blushing, Seolha scolds Jungmu for making a joke like that at a time like this. Seolha complains that leaving scars is not okay. Jungmu decides to shift the topic from himself and reminds Seolha that he had asked her if she was okay. She claims to be okay, even though once or twice she wanted to hit Jungmu. With her well-being confirmed, Jungmu looks sad as he declares he should have paid attention from the moment rumors about President Kim began to spread. He apologizes to Seolha for not paying attention, but she tells him he doesn't need to apologize. Still, Jungmu feels worried. Just to be safe, he instructs Seolha to let him know if something happens with President Kim in the future that makes her feel uncomfortable. Seolha informs him that she will take President Kim's word since he promised nothing would happen, but he asks her what she thinks about him. Seolha ignores the question, however, and intends to go home when Jungmu asks her if she is really going to leave him like this. Seolha just reminds Jungmu that they have to go to work tomorrow. He ignores that, reminding her that they agreed there was no limit to the number of times they could get intimate, which causes her to remember when she agreed to that. Aside from that, Jungmu feels Seolha might be tired after work tomorrow. In the end, he decides to ignore his urges and take Seolha home, but before he knows it, she is seated on his lap. Jungmu asks Seolha why she is fond of seducing him, but she feels she should be the one asking him that. The following day, Seolha is working at exceptional speed while her colleagues ponder why she is so fast. What they don't know is that Seolha is trying her best to stay awake and concentrate. She also tried to will herself into thinking about other things, especially stuff like what happened yesterday. While she works, Jungmu watches from a distance but says nothing later on. He is in the elevator with Seolha as she dozes. He may not have noticed that, but he complains that Seolha didn't give him a chance to hold her hand today. Startled back to consciousness, Seolha whispers that they are at work right now. She also points out that they have been dating for a week, so it might be too early to hold hands publicly. Jungmu argues that Romeo and Juliet only knew each other for 5 days, and that was enough for them. Seolha responds that Romeo and Juliet's love was that way because it was love at first sight, unlike theirs. Jungmu doesn't agree with this belief. He feels he and Romeo are the same. He tells Seolha that if she has any doubts about him, she should know that his eyes have changed since she came to him. Seolha confesses that back in the day when Jungmu called her ugly up to 4 times, she was deeply hurt by those words. He admits that he was probably jealous of her when he said those things, and it's not easy to hide one's feelings for another. He sincerely apologizes for that time and begs Seolha to forgive him, promising to think more deeply about her and treat her better. He asks her to pity him, stating that he applied much restraint during the 3 years. Hearing this motivates Seolha to hold Jungmu's hand, confessing that she didn't know he applied that much restraint. Now she knows, so Jungmu makes Seolha a proposal. He proposes that if she promises not to leave him, he will try to control himself in the office from now on. Seolha agrees, but also has a proposal of her own, proposing that as she will never, he should never think of running away from her. They make these declarations with their hands locked together. Jungmu then jokes about how if he ever runs away, Seolha will beat him up, and she agrees with him that she will do so. When Seolha and Jungmu finally get to their stop, they come down from the elevator, and Seolha fills him in on his tomorrow's schedule. After talking for some time, she notices that Jungmu isn't listening and calls out to him. Surprisingly, he doesn't hear her. Instead, he is focused on someone else, seeking to know what happened. That person is his mother, and things just got even more interesting. Jungmu and his mother settle into his office, sipping tea that Seolha just served. His mother takes a happy sip and compliments the tea, but Jungmu doesn't waste time and asks why she's here. She puts her cup down with a sigh, asking if he can at least smile since they haven't seen each other in 3 years. Jungmu corrects her. It's been 2 years. She reminds him that she moved to the US 3 years ago, but he points out they saw each other at his friend's wedding 2 years ago. After a pause, she finally remembers and laughs at herself for forgetting. Jungmu, unimpressed, comments that it clearly wasn't important to her. She brushes it off, blaming old age, and shifts the conversation, asking if the chairman is doing well. He simply says yes, but that doesn't stop her from reminiscing about how the chairman always got sick in the winter. Before she can get carried away, Jungmu cuts in, assuring her that the chairman is healthier than he is, and there's nothing to worry about. Then, back to the point. Why did she suddenly come to Korea? She hesitates before saying that it's in a few days and he knows why. Jungmu's expression hardens. She never cared about it before, so why now? Her hands grip the fabric of her dress as she says she saw her, the person they're both thinking about, in a dream. She was crying miserably, like there was something left unsaid. Jungmu stays silent, but his mother doesn't look away. Instead, her voice softens as she asks if he still resents her. She says knows how much that woman meant to him, but she's hurting too. Meanwhile, Seolha sits at her desk, trying to focus on work, but her mind keeps drifting. She's never seen Jungmu like that before. When she brought them tea, his mother thanked her warmly, but Jungmu, stiff as a board, just told her to get back to work. She smiled anyway and left, but something about the atmosphere in his office felt off. A little while later, her phone rings. It's Jungmu. After the call ends, she mutters to herself, wondering if he's getting another migraine. It hasn't even been that long since he last took his medicine. She brings him tea that's supposed to help with migraines, but he still asks for the medicine. Gently, she reminds him that it hasn't been long since his last dose, then turns to his mother, apologizing for interrupting. His mother doesn't seem to mind at all. Seolha hands him the medicine, suggesting he wait a bit before taking more, and he nods in agreement. With that, she leaves. Outside the office, she sighs. She thought the mood inside would have improved by now, but it still feels heavy. Meeting Jungmu's mother is awkward, especially since he never talks about her. Back inside, Jungmu stares at the migraine medicine in his hand. His mother watches him and casually notes that it seems like he gets migraines often. He shrugs it off, saying it's just work stress. Then she says that he looked so much more relaxed he looked when Seolha walked in. She asks, who would have thought someone could actually melt that icy heart of his? Jungmu doesn't respond. She smiles to herself and says she likes Seolha. She seems like a good person. Jungmu puts the medicine down and finally speaks, saying Seolha is a good person. In fact, she is too good for him. Later that night, Seolha sits at home, lost in thought. She can't stop worrying about Jungmu. Yoonshim, who's hanging out with her, nudges her and asks who she's thinking about so hard when they're supposed to be spending time together. Seolha asks if Yoonshim doesn't have someone who makes her heart race just by looking at them. Yoonshim scoffs, saying she forgot what that feels like a long time ago. Then, with a grin, she pulls Seolha into a hug, teasing that she's just happy Seolha finally worked things out with her crush. Before Seolha can respond, the TV chimes in with an emergency report. The news warns that the roads are dangerously slippery due to the snowstorm, and drivers should be extra careful. Yoonshim groans, complaining about how much she hates layering up in the cold. Seolha absent-mindedly hums in response, barely listening. Her mind is elsewhere. It's that time of year again. Meanwhile, at home, Jungmu sits in silence, replaying his mother's words in his head. She had asked if they could go there together this year. And then he recalls what she said about that dream, the one where the person was crying. 10 years ago, on a snowy day just like this, there was a hit-and-run caused by a drunk driver. The driver was caught and sent to jail, but that didn't change what happened. That's why Jungmu always insists on driving himself, no matter how busy he is. His gaze drifts to a framed photo of him and her. He stares at it, asking her why she was crying, and if she is sad because he is the only one that visits her every year. He picks up his phone and calls someone. When the person picks, he asks them if they can talk. Jungmu's father immediately asks him what the call is about. Instead of answering right away, Jungmu asks if he's busy that weekend. His father says he's playing golf with Taekang's chairman. It may be golf, but it's really business. Then he invites Jungmu to help him during the meeting. Jungmu says he's sure he'll do fine on his own, but when his father insists, Jungmu tells him he already has plans. His father tells him to change them, and Jungmu refuses, saying it's important. His father lets it go and asks why he called. Jungmu says he thought he would just start doing this from then on. His father tells him not to bother and hangs up. Jungmu sighs and looks at the picture of him and the girl, thinking his father has completely forgotten her. The next day at work, the employees talk about the company's anniversary the next day and the day off they're getting. One of them asks Seolha what she's going to do, and she says, "Just sleep." They say that's a good idea and give her a vitamin drink. As the day nears closing time, Seolha stands beside Jungmu, who's working, thinking that he looks down, and she wonders if she should ask what's wrong. Before she can, he tells her she looks tired and asks if she's okay. He tells her she should go home first since he still has a lot of work left. As Seolha goes home with Yoonshim, who's excited about her day off, she thinks about how she never got to ask Jungmu anything. Then, she suddenly stops and tells Yoonshim she needs to go see him. Meanwhile, Jungmu falls asleep on the couch in his office and dreams of that night 10 years ago. That night, he was talking to the girl on the phone about something she bought, something she'd been looking forward to all year. He apologized for not going with her because of a last-minute meeting. Just as she was about to reply, he heard her get hit by a car. He asked if she was okay, saying hello over and over again, but got no reply as her phone lay on the snowy ground. Jungmu wakes up from his dream, not noticing the coat draped over him. Seolha asks if he is okay, and without thinking, he pulls her into a hug. When she hugs him back, he asks what she is doing there, and she tells him she wanted to wait for him. Noticing the coat, he asks about it, and she says she didn't want him to be cold. Then, she gently tells him that he can talk to her about whatever's bothering him, though she may not be much help. He tells her his mother's visit must have been on his mind, and he's just being sensitive, that's all. Then, he apologizes for making her worry. She starts to say something, but he suddenly takes her hand and says, "This isn't good." When she asks what's wrong, he places her hand on his face and with a playful pout, says he will never let her hand go for the rest of his life, which causes her face heats up. Changing the subject, he asks about her plans for the night, and she reminds him that she came back to wait for him. He nods and tells her they should go. When she asks where, he simply says there is something more important than work right now. At his apartment, Jungmu prepares dinner for them. While he's cooking, he asks about the clothes he gave her. She comes out wearing them awkwardly, mentioning that they are big but wearable. Jungmu turns red and quickly looks away. Seolha sits at the dining table, glancing around his place and noting that it's cleaner than hers. Soon, he serves the delicious-looking meal, and she stares at it, saying she suddenly feels nervous. He asks what there is to be nervous about and tells her to eat. The moment she takes a bite, she relaxes. It's good. After dinner, they watch a horror movie together. While Seolha watches excitedly, Jungmu covers his eyes like a scared kid. She reaches out to tap him but accidentally drops her hand way too close to his swimsuit area. Realizing where she touched, she immediately pulls her hand back, blushing furiously. Jungmu smirks and says if she wanted to touch him, she should have just said so. Flustered, she tries to explain that it was a mistake, but he grabs her hand and places it right back where she touched, grinning as he asks if she's really not going to touch him at all. Jungmu tells her that he can't force her if she doesn't want to. Without missing a beat, she quickly replies that she never said that. Smirking, he picks up the remote and asks if it's okay to stop the movie. She nods shyly, then leans in and kisses him on the cheek. He strokes her chin before kissing her properly. One kiss turns into another, and soon the night stretches long and intense. The next morning, Jungmu holds Seolha from behind, refusing to let go no matter what she does. She sighs and asks how long they are going to stay like this. He casually replies that since she said her back hurts, he's just offering support. Then, with a teasing grin, he reminds her that she was the one who wanted to be in charge last night. Flustered, she quickly covers his mouth, mumbling that that is not what happened. He just laughs, teasing her about touching him again, which only makes her blush harder. Then, changing the subject, he asks if she wants to take a bath. She asks him if it will be by herself. He grins, saying he'd love to join her, but he's not confident that he won't do anything to her in the bath. Seolha groans and tells him not to bother because she can't take any more. Amused, he promises just to hold her and nothing else. Then he tells her to wait while he fills the bathtub. She watches him go and asks if he's really going to do it himself. He turns back and tells her she shouldn't lift even a finger in his house because she already takes care of him enough at work. As they soak in the bathtub, Jungmu thanks her, his voice softer than usual. He tells her he was stuck in an endless loop of struggles and hardship. But then, like a gift, she came into his life. Touched, she thanks him back and says she feels the same. He pulls her closer, but just as he's about to break his promise, her stomach growls loudly. Silence. Then, Jungmu bursts out laughing while Seolha turns completely red. She glares at him and says it's his fault for completely draining her. Still laughing, he tells her not to look at him with those cute eyes. It makes him want to kiss her. And of course he does. And just like that, his promise is broken. After their bath, Seolha dries off when she gets a call from Director Park. As she answers, she rummages through her bag for something the director needs. A few things spill out, including the small snowman figurine. As she finalizes the call, Jungmu picks up the snowman. His expression shifts instantly, his face clouding over with a deep sadness. Jungmu repackages the snowman and casually says he didn't know she liked figurines. Seolha takes it from him, eyeing him curiously as she asks if he knows about them. He shrugs, saying he's seen them around and then asks if she collects them every season. She tells him that she only collects them during the winter. Curious, he asks if there is a particular figurine she wants, and she says Rudolph because it's the cutest in her opinion. Jungmu doesn't say anything to that. Instead, he smoothly changes the topic, asking her what she wants to eat. The next day, while working in his office, Jungmu finds his mind drifting to Seolha's snowman figurine. He never expected her to have that figurine. Right then, his phone rings. It's his mother. She tells him she was thinking of him and asks if there's anything he wants to eat. He tells her he can feed himself. Then, he asks if she still only goes grocery shopping when there's a sale, reminding her that he gave her his credit card. She laughs lightly, saying it's a waste to spend too much on food and she just can't kick the old habit. Then he promises to visit her at her hotel that weekend and is about to end the call when she stops him. She says she will make him some stir-fried anchovies when he comes, since it's his favorite. He starts to tell her that they are not his favorite, but Hyunyoung's. But he stops himself and tells her that she doesn't need to make anything. She should just relax during her stay in Korea. Meanwhile, Cho Tae-gun arrives at Venus to shop, immediately drawing attention. Everyone can't help but stare at him. He walks into a store and spots Seolha standing by a display, trying to pick out a tie for Jungmu. She's clearly deep in thought, her gaze flicking between the options. Then, as she imagines Jungmu wearing one, her face turns pink. She looks at the tie that caught her attention, wondering if it would make the perfect birthday gift. On Jungmu's last birthday, he had told her to return the gifts the employees sent and to send out a notice telling them not to send him gifts again. She had agreed, but back then she had also bought him a gift and never gave it to him. But now things are different. She's not just his employee anymore. She's his girlfriend. Tae-gun comes from behind her, asking if she's shopping for her boyfriend just as she gets a call from Yoonshim. Without a second thought, she picks up the call and walks out of the store, not even sparing Tae-gun a glance. Later, while having coffee with Yoonshim, Seolha asks about work. Yoonshim sighs, complaining as usual, but then suddenly brightens up and says a total hottie came into the store today. She leans in excitedly and reveals that it was Cho Tae-gun, the eldest son of the Taekang group. Seolha just blinks, completely clueless. Yoonshim gushes about how ridiculously handsome he is, even saying he's just as hot as Jungmu. Seolha says she doubts that, and that Jungmu is the hottest man in the world. A deep voice asks her if she really thinks so. She starts to answer, but her breath catches when she realizes Jungmu is standing right there. Still looking at Seolha, he says he can never get in touch with her when she's with Yoonshim. Seolha digs through her bag, mumbling that she didn't hear her phone ring. When she finally looks up, she sees the seat across from her is empty. Yoonshim is already gone. Jungmu says he will have to thank Yoonshim for giving them time to go for a walk. As they stroll, Seolha asks what will happen if people start rumors about them. Jungmu just shrugs and says it would be great since they wouldn't have to hide their relationship anymore. He then asks if he can hold her hand, and she refuses. Pushing further, he asks if he can at least get a kiss. Again, she says no. Dropping the subject, he tells her not to schedule anything for him that weekend because he has a personal matter to attend to. Curious, she asks what it is, and he tells her he is meeting his mother. It's been a while since they have seen each other, so things feel a bit awkward between them. Everything suddenly makes sense. This must be why he looked so uncomfortable when his mother came to the office. As they walk and talk, a security guard discreetly takes a photo of them and sends it to Tae-gun. The moment Tae-gun sees the picture, he instantly recognizes Seolha, and just like that, he realizes she is Jungmu's girlfriend. The next day at work, Jungmu is busy writing when his pen suddenly runs out of ink. He leans back in his chair, glancing at his calendar, realizing the weekend is almost here. Outside his office, Seolha is focused on her own work when she gets a call from him, asking for pen ink. He tells her to just let him know where it is and he will find it himself, but she refuses, saying she will bring it to him. She walks into his office, mentioning that she bought a bunch of refills since she noticed he only ever uses that one fountain pen. Taking it from her, he says he will do it himself, then thanks her for coming despite being busy. Looking at her, he casually adds that it's always nice to see her. She turns away, blushing, and reminds him that she told him not to look at her like that during work hours. He grabs her playfully, joking about leaving work early together. Flustered, she pulls away, saying she has something urgent to do, then quickly rushes out of his office. Later, while working, she overhears some employees talking about Jeongmu and his fiancée supposedly meeting each other's parents for dinner that weekend. She remembers how Jungmu told her that him having a fiancé was just a ridiculous rumor, but still wishes she had gotten a clear yes or no answer from him. Either way, she figures he will be spending his weekend doing something similar to what she will be doing. The following morning, she has breakfast with Yoonshim, who complains that Seolha always goes somewhere alone. She even woke up early to go with her, only to find out that Seolha had already made the trip. Seolha tells her she didn't want to trouble her, and thanks her for worrying about her. Years ago, when Yoonshim's father was in court, the prosecutor presented the item the victim had been holding when he ran her over. a shattered Rudolph figurine. All her father said was that he was sorry, but he didn't remember. Since that day, Seolha always brought a figurine to the cemetery. She made sure to visit the day before the anniversary of the victim's death to avoid running into her family. Even though she knew it wouldn't change anything, she couldn't shake the image of the broken figurine from her mind. That's why, every year she left the figurines on Cha Yeon-young's grave. It just didn't feel right to move on. Yoonshim then asks Seolha about the dinner with Jungmu that she had heard rumors about. Seolha admits she hasn't asked him about it yet, and Yoonshim says that from the way Jungmu looks at her, she doubts he would ever meet another woman. Besides, Seolha met his parents first. Seolha dismisses it, saying that doesn't really count. Yoonshim, getting serious, tells Seolha that Jungmu better not hurt her, no matter how much of a CEO he is. She quickly changes the subject, telling Seolha that the Amor Hotel is holding a year-end event the next day for their 50th anniversary, and they should check it out. It's open to the public. The next day, at the Amor event, Jungmu walks in, thinking he should start a hotel business. He's lost in thought when someone calls his name. An elegant woman approaches, and he greets her with a smile, saying it's been a while. She tells him she missed him and asks how he's been. Seolha, meanwhile, spots Jungmu with the woman clinging to him. She immediately recognizes her from a photo she saw in an article. It's Cho Kang-hee, the youngest daughter of the Taekang group, rumored to be Jungmu's fiancé. Seolha's mind races, thinking that Jungmu had told her he was meeting his mother. Could it be that his plan was to introduce her to his fiancé? She tells Yoonshim she needs to use the restroom, and as she walks away, she tells herself she's there to enjoy herself, so she will deal with this later. While Seolha is in the restroom, Yoonshim waits outside, rummaging through her bag. Meanwhile, Taegun, who is looking for his sister, walks toward the restroom. An item falls out of Yoonshim's bag and rolls in Taegun's direction. He frowns and kicks it away. Yoonshim, surprised, stops him and asks why he would kick someone else's stuff. She adds that the least he could do is pick it up. Taegun tells her that she shouldn't have dropped it in the first place. They exchange a stare, and after a brief moment, he says if she's really upset, he will apologize. He then hands her his business card, telling her to call him if she wants compensation. Feeling offended, Yoonshim asks Taegun what he means, but he just smirks in response. She tells him to forget it and walks away, insisting she doesn't need any compensation. But before she can leave, Taegun slips his business card between her fingers and walks off, telling her to call him if she needs it. Yoonshim looks at the card, sees his name, and realizes that she didn't recognize him earlier because his creepy attitude overshadowed his looks. She also thinks the rumors about him must be true. While Taegun is seen as a promising young businessman and a prospective heir to Taekang, he's also a troublemaker that the company struggles to keep in check. Yoonshim shoves the card in her bag just as Seolha catches up with her, asking where she's going. Yoonshim replies, saying she was trying to avoid a piece of trash. When Seolha asks for more details, Yoonshim just tells her to forget it. Seolha pushes the whole thing with Taegun and Kang-hee out of her mind, determined to enjoy the day with Yoonshim. Meanwhile, Kang-hee casually brushes her hand over Jungmu's chest, claiming to remove some lint. Jungmu tells her to leave it, warning her that people might get the wrong idea. It's too late, though, as whispers start spreading about them. Kang-hee asks what's wrong with a little misunderstanding and says she doesn't mind it. Jungmu, however, says he minds, and she teases him, asking if it's because he has a girlfriend. She points out that he never dated anyone when they were in school. Jungmu avoids the question by glancing at his watch and saying he's supposed to meet someone soon. Kang-hee suggests they have dinner sometime, but he firmly tells her that he has a girlfriend and they can catch up at another event. As he walks away, his thoughts drift to Hyun-young, wondering if she would have turned out like Kang-hee after 10 years. Later, when Jungmu arrives at his mother's hotel room, she excitedly shows him the gifts she bought for him. Everything from nuts for his migraines to supplements and even a sweater. She also surprises him by revealing she bought a gift for Seolha. She asks if he isn't dating Seolha, and then mentions how great the tea Seolha served her was. Jungmu promises he'll bring Seolha to visit her next time, which seems to touch his mother. After that, They go to visit Hyunyoung's grave. His mother lays down the gifts she bought for Hyunyoung, saying it's her first time visiting the grave, so she ended up buying a lot of things. She admits that they didn't cost much, but she regrets not having bought them for Hyunyoung when she was alive. Overcome with emotion, she apologizes to Jungmu for making him carry all the burden alone. She also says that she never should have left, but she couldn't accept the fact that Hyunyoung was gone. Jungmu comforts her, blaming himself for what happened and wishing he had gone with Hyunyoung that day. His mother reassures him, telling him it's not his fault and that he shouldn't blame himself. Later at home, Jungmu drops a bag with the snowman figurine on the counter. He recalls that when he and his mother visited Hyunyoung's grave, they found the figurine there. His mother had asked if he had placed it, to which he replied that it was probably left by one of Hyunyoung's friends. Jungmu had always assumed that someone close to Hyunyoung left the figurines every year on her death anniversary. This year, the figurine is a snowman, and Jungmu thinks it's just a coincidence that Seolha has one too. He receives a text from his mother thanking him for driving her to the cemetery. He replies, suggesting they meet soon for tea. Days later, at work, Jungmu moves around the company, talking to various department heads while Seolha follows him around. After he finishes, Seolha, feeling exhausted, begins to walk away, thinking she needs to talk to Jungmu today. Jungmu stops her and asks if she will be free that night. Seolha immediately assumes he's about to break up with her and invite her to his wedding, and she nervously stammers that she's free. Just then, a man approaches Jungmu, telling him that Taegun is there. In Jungmu's office, Seolha serves tea to him and Taegun, then leaves them to talk. As Taegun casually mentions the possibility of becoming brother-in-laws due to his connection with Kang Hee, Jungmu freezes mid-sip, surprised by the comment. Taegun, noticing his reaction, asks if something's wrong and continues to praise Kang Hee, saying she is a good person. Jungmu, curious, mentions that he didn't realize Taegun and Kang Hee were so close. Taegun explains that Kang Hee was upset when Jungmu cut their meeting short at the hotel, and then asks Jungmu to consider dating Kang Hee. Jungmu thinks that he is sure Taegun is there to build connections with Venus because it is better to have a connection with Venus than as a competition. He suggests that maybe Venus's chairman would approve of the match and asks Jungmu if the reason he can't date Kang Hee is because of his secretary. Minutes later, Taegun makes his way out of Venus with a smirk on his face, thinking that Jungmu is predictable. When he asked Jungmu about his secretary, he wanted to see him get flustered. Jungmu calmly said to Taegun that he seemed interested in Seolha, but sadly, she already has a boyfriend. Taegun thinks that if he can't build a connection by family, he will be left with no other choice. As he looks at the text he got from the security man, who took the picture of Seolha and Jungmu, Kim Sung-chan, which says that Venus chairman doesn't seem to know yet. The thought of scandalous news about Venus CEO Cha Jungmu cheating on his fiancée with his secretary makes Taegun smile. Just then, he sees Seolha with Yoonshim, who he recognizes, and says that this is interesting. Yoonshim asks Seolha if she's leaving work with Jungmu. Seolha responds that they'll be having dinner together. Yoonshim, sensing Seolha's hesitations, grabs her hand and encourages her to be honest with Jungmu. She reminds Seolha that her honesty is her best quality, and she should tell Jungmu whatever is on her mind. However, during their dinner, Seolha feels too nervous to bring up her concerns and even chokes on her food a little. Afterward, as Jungmu walks her home, he suddenly apologizes, causing Seolha's heart to race with worry. But Jungmu quickly clarifies that he is sorry because he's concerned she's been affected by the rumors about his engagement. He goes on to explain how he spent the weekend visiting his late sister's grave with his mother, and how he's always done it alone. But this year, his mother joined him. Touched, Seolha hugs him, apologizing with tears in her eyes. She admits that she should have asked him sooner, but was too afraid that the rumors might be true. She apologizes for bringing up something so difficult for him, and he reassures her that he will be more careful in the future to avoid misunderstandings. That night, they talk about many things: his childhood, his relationship with his mother, and his school days, allowing Seolha to get to know him better, deepening their bond. The next day, at work, 2 employees suggest having dinner with Seolha, but upon seeing her swollen eyes, they assume she's either sick or dealing with a bad breakup, so they decide to leave her be. Later, Seolha meets with Jungmu in his office. After she finishes her work update, he stares at her and gently touches her eyes, noticing the swelling. She tells him she iced them before bed, and he reminds her that he told her not to cry. She tries to shift the conversation back to work, but Jungmu stops her, saying that right now, what he needs is her. He pulls her closer, saying that it is lunch soon and they can close the door, his voice suggestive, which causes her to blush. He accuses her of having dirty thoughts while holding her. Just then, a knock interrupts them, and an employee pokes his head in to mention a report that needs Jungmu's attention. Jungmu tells him he'll look at it later since he's busy at the moment. After the employee leaves, Seolha, who is hiding behind Jungmu, relieved to have escaped the awkward situation just in time. Jungmu, a little disappointed, comments on how much he hates hiding their relationship and asks her to be patient with it. He then asks what she's doing that weekend, revealing that he's finished all his work ahead of time so he can spend time with her. He gently holds her face, expressing that they still have many things to experience together. Seolha grabs Jungmu's tie, her eyes playful as she tells him that if he keeps seducing her like this, she's going to… Without warning, she pushes him onto his desk. He barely has time to react before she leans in, teasing that she isn't going to kiss him. Before he can respond, she's already at the door, leaving him flustered and blushing. He sighs, muttering that she got him all worked up and just leaves. As Seolha leaves the office, she notices a group of people nearby. Among them, a red-haired man catches her attention. He looks oddly familiar. Their eyes meet for a brief second and she quickly flinches, looking away as if nothing happened. She picks up her pace, not realizing that the red-haired man is still watching her as she walks away. Meanwhile, at Taekang Group, Taegun, who is in his office, is being disturbed by his sister, who asks him who Jungmu's girlfriend is. Taegun casually replies that Jungmu's girlfriend is prettier than her. She scoffs, unimpressed. He says that about every girl. He tells her that if she's so curious, she should just come to the next business meeting with him, but she refuses, saying she'll find out on her own. As she gathers her things to leave, and tells Taegun that things won't end well for him if he messes up with Venus, and he shouldn't forget his own messy track record. She pauses at the door, adding that he should get off drugs too. After she's gone, Taegun leans back in his chair, repeating her words under his breath. Things won't end well for him? Well, that's still better than sitting around doing nothing. That night, Seolha lies in bed, her heart beating too fast for her to sleep. The anticipation of her weekend trip with Jungmu keeps her wide awake. Just as she turns onto her side, her phone buzzes. Seeing Jungmu's name on the screen, she immediately picks up. She asks why he's calling, and he answers saying he just missed her. Her face heats up, her heart pounding even faster now. He sighs, saying he wishes tomorrow would come faster. Then, almost hesitantly, he adds that he wishes he were at her place right now. Seolha bites her lip before asking if she should come over instead. There's a brief pause before he responds, his voice lower this time. He'll come to her. Because between the two of them, he misses her more. The next day, they arrive at a hotel by the beach. They spend the day indulging in good food. Afterward, they take a slow walk along the shore. Jungmu looks at Seolha, his expression unusually serious. Then, in a soft voice, he tells her that he really likes her. Way more than she thinks. Her heart flutters at his confession, and she tightens her grip on his hand, smiling as she tells him she really likes him too. Later, they find a cozy local restaurant for dinner where Seolha eats to her heart's content. Even after a full meal, she still craves something sweet and insists on getting cake for dessert. As they're about to leave, Seolha suddenly remembers that she left her phone inside the restaurant. She hurries back to grab it, and when she returns, she spots Jungmu talking to a woman. Her steps slow, and she watches for a moment before the woman finally leaves. She walks up to him, calling him by his full name, and asks him if he was hitting on another woman while she was away. He asks if she's jealous, and she denies it. He explains that the woman just asked him for directions, and Seolha lies and says she heard their conversation. Then he says, but she was pretty, which angers Seolha. He tells her that he is talking about his girlfriend who came with a jealous look on her face. After that, they drive to a secluded spot near the beach where fireworks light up the night sky. But instead of watching them, they find themselves lost in each other. After a while, Jungmu pulls away just enough to whisper that the car is too cramped. Suggestively, he asks if they should head back to the hotel. Flustered, Seolha covers her face, mumbling that the hotel is too far. He chuckles, kissing the top of her head before agreeing to stay right where they are. Jungmu tells Seolha they should just kiss for now because he forgot his protection at the hotel. When they get back to the hotel later, though, they definitely take things further than just making out. Meanwhile, Taegun is at a hotel club, surrounded by women, but his mind is elsewhere. He remembers an incident with his father from a while ago. His dad slapped him after he made a bad investment and asked, "What's so special about Venus?" Then, he pointed out that he and Jungmu went to the same college and questioned why Taegun couldn't be as successful as Jungmu. Taegun stayed quiet, but his father pushed further, asking if he could ever catch up to Jungmu. Taegun looks at the picture of Jungmu and Seolha again, thinking that the way Jungmu looked at Seolha in the picture means that he is definitely serious about her. Just then, the red-haired man shows up with a briefcase, telling Taegun he brought what he asked for. Taegun complains about how long it took to bring him a couple of drugs, and the man explains that it's getting harder to sneak things past the authorities. He also casually mentions that he's spread the rumors about Jungmu and Seolha all over Venus. Taegun slaps him hard. He says that he asked him to do that ages ago, and asks him if he knows how much he pays him. He tells the man he'll talk to Chairman Cha about Jungmu and Seolha himself since they're playing golf soon. Taegun smirks, adding that maybe falling for the secretary runs in the family. He starts thinking about how he's going to mess things up for Jungmu and Seolha. Back to Jungmu and Seolha. She cracks open a can of beer and tells Jungmu she's always wanted to just sit down and drink with him. She asks if he's any good at handling alcohol, saying she's never really seen him drink before. Even when they're out for dinner, he'll order a drink and never touch it. He tells her that it is because he doesn't want to end up doing something he will regret. And he also doesn't like getting drunk. Fast forward 10 minutes and Jungmu is completely out of it, passed out on the table after just one can of beer. Seolha rests her head on the table, watching him. He mumbles sleepily, asking her to call him by his name again, referring to earlier when she used his full name after seeing him with the lady. Seolha smiles to herself, thinking she can't just keep calling him Mr. Cha or Sir forever. She quietly whispers his name a few times, feeling a warmth in her chest. Back at the club, the red-haired man storms out of Taegun's private room, fuming. He's getting tired of doing Taegun's dirty work. As he pulls out his phone to check Jungmu's contact, he starts thinking he might have other options. As he exits the hotel, he bumps into someone, snapping at them to watch where they're going. The person apologizes and walks away, but the red-haired man watches closely, realizing it's Kim Woo-wi, the owner of the place, who's also stuck in some mess with Taegun. The next morning, Seolha tries to wake Jungmu by calling his name, but when he doesn't stir, she shakes her head and mutters, "Jungmu is an idiot." Days later, Seolha's alarm blares at 7 a.m., jolting her awake. She suddenly remembers that today is Director Choi's wedding, and in a panic, she rushes to get dressed and heads to the venue to catch up with Jungmu. In her hurry, she doesn't notice a car coming up behind her until someone pulls her out of the way. The person, who turns out to be Kim Woo-wi, say that people shouldn't be driving so recklessly on such narrow streets. Someone could get hurt. He asks if she's okay, and she thanks him, brushing off his hand from her shoulder. However, his stare makes her feel uneasy. When he realizes her discomfort, he quickly apologizes and mentions that she looks like someone he knows. She dismisses it, saying it happens sometimes, and continues on her way while Woo-wi watches her. At the wedding venue, Seolha walks alongside Jungmu, feeling an unusual nervousness. She wonders if it's because they're at a wedding. They stop to talk to a woman who's the president of another company, but while they chat, Jungmu can't stop looking at Seolha. He excuses himself to take a call from his mother, stepping away to speak privately. On the call, his mother asks if he's busy, to which he replies that he's not. She mentions she wants to make him seaweed soup for his birthday the next day, and he promises to visit with Seolha, which excites her. She offers to bring him anything else he might need, but he tells her he's fine. Meanwhile, Seolha looks around for Jungmu but bumps into President Kim. He asks her where Jungmu went and why he would leave his girlfriend behind, which catches Seolha off guard. President Kim goes on to say that Jungmu thinks he's all that just because he's a young CEO, but he's really just a lucky guy who was brought in because Chairman Cha couldn't have a child with his actual wife. Seolha's hands tense up as she struggles to stay calm. President Kim smirks and asks if she didn't know that Jungmu is an illegitimate child. Seolha thanks President Kim politely, telling him that she appreciates his interest in Jungmu. She then adds that she's heard about Jungmu's childhood, how he couldn't live with Chairman Cha due to family backlash. Despite having no support, Jungmu still managed to get into Korea's top university's law department and graduate with honors. And on top of that, every business venture he's led has been a success. President Kim dismisses it, saying that anyone can do what Jungmu did if they're desperate enough. Seolha, unfazed, asks if he's never been in a desperate situation himself. At that moment, Jungmu, who's been listening in on the conversation, smiles. Later that evening, Seolha and Jungmu sit in his car, parked near her neighborhood. He tells her to get some rest as she comments on how the day went. An awkward silence follows, prompting him to ask if there's something on her mind. She quickly replies, "No," and starts digging through her bag. The clock strikes midnight and she pulls out a gift, wishing him a happy birthday. She says she's always wanted to give him a gift but never could because he never accepts things from his employees. Jungmu starts to unwrap it, but she stops him, saying he should open it at home because she feels embarrassed. He teasingly tells her it makes him want to open it even more. She nervously insists that it's nothing big, and he thanks her, adding that anything she gives him is perfect. She insists he wait until she's completely gone before opening it, and then leaves. He offers to walk her the rest of the way, but she tells him her house is just around the corner. Before she walks off, he tells her he'll call her. Once she leaves, Jungmu opens the gift and stares at it in surprise. It's a piece of clothing with his initials sewn into it. Just then, his phone buzzes. He checks it and his face falls when he sees a news article about him allegedly cheating on his fiancée with his secretary, accompanied by a blurry picture of them together. Meanwhile, Taegun watches the same article, a grin on his face. He mutters to himself, "I wonder what Chairman Cha will make of this." Chairman Cha handles the news about Jungmu allegedly cheating on his fiancée. He then directly asks Jungmu if it's true that he's been fooling around with his secretary. Jungmu responds firmly, saying that isn't fooling around with her. He's in a serious, wholehearted relationship with her. The chairman scoffs at this, saying such feelings won't last. Jungmu, however, stands his ground, replying that not everyone is like him. Chairman Cha reminds Jungmu of the day he became a part of the Cha family, emphasizing how Jungmu had begged, promising to do whatever was asked of him. Jungmu would learn the family business, become the successor, and marry whoever Chairman Cha arranged for him, without question. Jungmu calmly counters, saying that he did agree to do anything, but it was because he was desperate to save Hyunyoung. The chairman scoffs, telling Jungmu that it's not his fault Hyunyoung got into an accident before her treatment. Jungmu, however, firmly states that the accident could have been avoided if only Chairman Cha had sent her to the US. Jungmu's anger builds as he continues, recalling how the chairman had refused to attend Hyunyoung's funeral, just to avoid people finding out about his illegitimate children. He tells Chairman Cha that the only reason he has the Cha surname is because he is his father, so the chairman should use that as an excuse to interfere in his life. Jungmu declares that he has no obligation to follow his demands anymore because Hyunyoung is dead. He remembers the beginning of that winter, the year Hyunyoung passed away, when he first learned of her leukemia. At the time, it made no sense to him. His mother had explained that Hyunyoung suddenly collapsed, and they immediately sought out a physical test. In his desperation, Jungmu turned to Venus, pleading with his father for help. He had knelt before Chairman Cha, begging him to save Hyunyoung. Chairman Cha had coldly asked, "What will you do for me in return?" Jungmu knew that this was going to come back and bite him, but he still agreed to do whatever Chairman Cha demanded. In return, Chairman Cha agreed to save his own daughter. Jungmu suppressed the repulsion he felt seeing Chairman Cha tower over him as if he was a god. He told himself he could tolerate it as long as it meant Hyun-young would be saved. That thought kept him going. Later, on his way home, Jungmu slams on the brakes and grips the steering wheel tightly in frustration. His mother calls, but he picks up, canceling their plans for the day. The next day, Seolha, who is at work, talks to Jungmu, who is feeling sick at home, on the phone. She offers to bring over some medicine, and he apologizes for the news article, but she reassures him it isn't true. Jungmu admits that, technically, they're secretly dating. He changes the subject, telling her that hearing her voice is making him feel a bit better, and she tells him to rest up and get better soon. He says he'll try to make it to work in the afternoon, but she insists he take the day off, which he's never done before. Later, still feeling sick, Jungmu is irritated by his condition, especially since he wants to see Seolha. Then he receives a cryptic text from an unknown number, which says that his twin sister must be crying in the afterlife, and that she is watching every single thing he is doing right now. Back at Venus, Seolha is at work when she hears footsteps approaching. Expecting Jungmu, she turns around only to find Chairman Cha instead, his expression stern. They head into Jungmu's office for some privacy, where the chairman bluntly asks how long she's been working for Jungmu. When she replies that it's been a little over 3 years, he comments that it's far too long, implying that it's no surprise Jungmu is in such a mess. He continues by saying that Seolha is around the same age as Jungmu, and is with him every day, so of course feelings will start to flourish between them. Then he tells her that Jungmu is going to get engaged soon. He is fixing a date between Jungmu and Waihi, youngest daughter of Taikang Group. He tells Seolha to make sure no more ridiculous rumors like the one from the previous day get out again. He adds that while Seolha may have had her fun, it's time she knows her place. That night, in an empty building, the red-haired man smirks to himself, commenting that he didn't expect Jungmu to arrive so soon. Jungmu steps forward, clearly angry, and asks the man what kind of game he's playing. Earlier, as Seolha left the office, she got a text from Jungmu, saying he can't see her. She thought that this was bound to happen sooner or later. After all, the relationship started out of her selfishness. She thought that she knew the relationship won't last forever, so she somewhat prepared herself for this moment, but it still hurts. Way more than she expected. Back in the present, gives Jungmu his card, which shows that he is an employee of Venus, Kim Seong-chan, and he tells Jungmu they are essentially on the same side. Jungmu, already getting annoyed, tells him he doesn't care who he is and to get to the point. Seong-chan asks him how much he really knows about Min Seolha, and Jungmu, now angry, asks what he means by that. Seong-chan reveals that he used to stay in the same orphanage as Seolha, though only for a year. This is the first time Jungmu has heard this. Seolha never talked about her family. Jungmu tells Seong-chan he's done with this conversation and that he should never contact him again. He adds that Seolha is not someone a person like Seong-chan can talk about freely, so he better watch his mouth. As Jungmu walks away, Seong-chan asks if he's forgotten about a man named Min Dong-woo, causing Jungmu to freeze. Outside, the snow falls heavily, and Seong-chan continues, mentioning that it was snowing that night too. The night Seolha's father ended his sister's life. Meanwhile, Seolha sits at home, waiting for Jungmu to contact her. She wants to message him first, but isn't sure what to say. She spots a button on the floor and wonders if it's from Jungmu, who might have dropped it when he came over the night before their trip. It was the first time he came to her apartment, and she had been so self-conscious about it. She told him she would have cleaned if she knew he was coming, but he reassured her, saying it was already clean, and she told him that it is unusually cleaner than this. He wrapped his hand around her, saying that she won't have to clean again if she lives with him. She said she would be in charge and disagreed, saying he would do that too. They spent the night, talking and looking at her pictures. Then they moved to the bed, where he told her that that wasn't the reason he came over. She hugged him, saying it is the reason she invited him. Back in the present, Seolha looked out of her window, thinking that she has always lived in that apartment alone, but it feels oddly empty today. The next day at Venus, Jungmu can't shake the conversation with Seong-chan from his mind. Seong-chan had asked if he knew what a person needed to live comfortably, and when Jungmu mentioned money, Seong-chan said his price. 100 million won, delivered in 3 weeks. Seongchan threatened that if Jungmu doesn't meet his demand, he will go to Seolha. Jungmu's mind races. Jungmu thinks that Seongchan knows how to negotiate, and if it is money he needs, he will pay him as much as he wants. However, Seongchan said he still had more cards up his sleeves, and Jungmu wonders what more Seongchan could be hiding. The mention of Min Dongwoo, the man Seongchan says is tied to Seolha, makes Jungmu tense up. He despises Dongwoo, and the thought that he could be Seolha's father only deepens his concern. He thinks that he knows that he shouldn't believe Seongchan's every word, but this keeps weighing on his mind. He dials his private investigator, Moo Young, and tells him to run a background check on Min Dongwoo for him, find out who Dongwoo is, and if he is really the culprit. The next day, Yoonshim is in the middle of her work when Taegun suddenly appears, surprising her. She yells out in shock as she turns to face him. As she finishes packing up the items he bought, he hands her his credit card. He asks her if she's sure she doesn't want any compensation and offers to give her as much as she wants. Yoonshim bluntly declines, telling him goodbye. As he leaves, she notices a small gift on the counter. It's a lip balm, which is what she dropped at the hotel. Then she lets out a string of curse words when she realizes it's the super expensive brand he bought. Once Taegun reaches his car, he shoves the items he bought at his driver, deep in thought. He thinks that Yoonshim is a tough one, but she is pretty amusing nonetheless, and if he waits long enough, he should be able to meet Min Seolha. Meanwhile, in Jungmu's office, Seolha can't stop coughing. He points out that she must have caught his cold, but she brushes it off, claiming it's the weather. As she's about to leave, Jungmu calls her back and touches her forehead to check if she has a fever. They lock eyes for a moment, the tension, before he lets her go and tells her she should head home. Seolha, sensing something's off, asks if he has plans. He simply says yes and walks away. As Seolha heads home later that day, she can't shake the feeling that something's different about Jungmu. He seems anxious, and she wonders if he had a talk with Chairman Cha. She imagines Jungmu breaking up with her and thinks that if that happens, she will just walk away with no regrets, or better yet, go out with a bang. She mutters to herself that she has to talk to him tonight, even if it's just over the phone. Just then, Jungmu's mother asks if she means her boyfriend, surprising Seolha. She nervously greets her, and Jungmu's mother, noticing her discomfort, tells her not to be awkward. She then invites Seolha to join her for dinner. As Jungmu prepares to leave, he searches for pharmacies online. Just then, Moo-young arrives, saying that it has been impossible to see Jungmu after high school. After they settle, Moo-young hands Jungmu an envelope, asking him if he is sure about this, and says there are photos from the scene of the accident. Moo-young goes on to explain that one set of photos pertains to Dongwoo, while the other details the accident itself. Jungmu clenches the papers in his hand, his voice low with anger and pain as he mutters that Hyunyoung could have been saved. He wishes she had died instantly instead of enduring the suffering she went through. Moo-young tells him that it's just speculation, based on the autopsy report and the doctor's opinion. No one really knows what happened in the moments following the accident. He tells Jungmu that the investigation was difficult because there were no security cameras in the area, but he was able to track down footage from a nearby rooftop camera. Moo-young slides another envelope toward Jungmu, explaining that the case had already been settled with other evidence, but the new footage reveals something important. Inside is a picture of a man standing next to the car that hit Hyunyoung, captured from the video. The image is grainy, but Moo-young shares the findings from a video analysis expert, who confirmed that the man matched Dongwoo's description. However, there is a small margin of error, he adds, because Dongwoo's car wasn't registered under his name. But the fact remains, Dongwoo was involved in the accident. Jungmu thinks that after hearing all of this, it still doesn't change the fact that he loves Seolha. It is just that what was once a single emotion has now branched out into several more complicated ones. He recalls the day Dongwoo was prosecuted, thinking that he feels enraged one moment, followed by a surge of grief with a touch of sorrow and pity. But above all, he feels the unfairness of it all. He thinks that Seolha deserves nothing but love, and it scares him just how much his heart grows for her, with each passing day. He questions why this must happen to them. His tears falls on the floor as he thinks that it has become an absolute sin to love Seolha, and he can't even begin to describe how unfair this is. The drama is just getting started. Want us to continue? Comment part 3 below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao!